Alex thought envy was for the weak, until a stray dog entered his life and changed everything. His wife, Elena, rescued a massive Great Dane named Thunder, but what started as an act of kindness turned into an obsession. As Thunder took over Elena's heart, Alex felt his marriage slipping away. Strange whispers, eerie gazes, and unsettling behavior made Alex question if Thunder was just a dog. One night, he witnessed something he couldn't unsee. Elena's bond with Thunder was more than love. It was something dark and unnatural. When Elena ended up in a psychiatric hospital, she revealed a chilling truth. Thunder wasn't just a dog, and he wasn't done with her yet. What happens when the line between man and beast blurs? Stay with us to find out how this haunting story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Once, Alex believed that envy was a feeling of the weak. A real man doesn't envy, doesn't complain, doesn't whine. He works hard, takes life's hits, and provides for his family. But one day, he realized that envy could take the most unexpected forms. Sometimes you could even envy a dog. Alex was married to Elena. Her parents were wealthy, and she had never worked a day in her life. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't need to. While Alex was busy grinding away at work from morning till night to support their family, Elena lived in her cozy little world of shopping, cafes, and spa days. But he loved her. She was kind, gentle, and always smiling. Even if she sometimes seemed too naive, her bright, carefree nature drew him in like sunshine after a long winter. Everything changed that day when they were driving back from her parents' countryside house. On the way, Elena spotted a dog. A massive Great Dane stood by the side of the road, dirty, skinny, with eyes full of sorrow. "Stop the car," she exclaimed. Alex frowned. "Are you serious? That's a Great Dane. What if it's wild?" But Elena was already unbuckling her seatbelt and reaching for the door. "Look at him. He needs help." She opened the door, and the dog, as if understanding it was being called, slowly approached. It looked like it had been through something terrible, yet it still trusted people. Alex sighed.
Fine.
"But if he chews us up in the middle of the night, it's on you." Elena just smiled and gently stroked the dog's massive head. "I'll call you Thunder," she whispered. At first, everything was fine. Alex even felt a sense of pride. Not everyone would agree to take in such a large dog. He bought food, got it vaccinated, and built a doghouse in the yard. Elena was beaming with happiness. She spent hours with the dog, feeding it, bathing it, brushing its fur. "He loves you," she said with a smile. But Alex felt a strange unease. He couldn't explain it, but something inside him whispered that a third presence had entered their family, and it wasn't human. The first warning came one evening when Alex returned home. Elena was sitting on the living room floor, and Thunder was lying beside her, his huge head resting on her lap. She was stroking his ears and murmuring something softly. Alex forced a smile. "Maybe I should lie down too." Elena looked up but didn't move. "You just got home from work. You're probably tired." He felt a flicker of irritation.
I've fine.
"It's not a big deal." She shrugged. "Okay, but I need to stay with Thunder." The dog looked at Alex, and there was something unsettling in its gaze, as if it knew. Every day, Alex felt like he was losing his wife. Before, she would wait for him to come home, cook dinner, and tell him about her day. Now, all her attention was focused on the Great Dane. "I think he's been through a lot," she said one evening. "There's so much pain in his eyes." Alex replied, "He's just a dog, Elena." But she didn't seem to hear him. She started sleeping on the couch, hugging Thunder, while Alex went to bed alone. She didn't notice how he looked at her, how he clenched his teeth when she said things like, "Thunder is so smart," or "Thunder is the best." One night, lying in bed, Alex heard her whisper, "You're my favorite." He froze. Maybe he had misheard, but the uneasy feeling didn't go away. The breaking point came one evening. Alex came home earlier than usual and walked into the house to find Elena sitting on the floor, hugging the dog tightly. Her face was pressed into its fur, her fingers caressing it gently. Alex felt his blood boil. "Elena, what the hell?" She jumped, startled, as if she hadn't expected him to return. "You're home already?
Yes.
And what are you doing?" She blushed. "He just loves being petted." Alex grabbed her arm and pulled her up, leading her to the bedroom. I don't want this, Elena. This isn't normal. She looked away, and in that moment, he realized it wasn't just affection or love for an animal. He had lost her. His wife, his place in her life, had been replaced by a dog. The next morning, Alex packed his things. Elena didn't try to stop him. She just sat on the porch, Thunder by her side, as if the dog was now the master of the house. As Alex walked out the gate, he turned back. Elena was stroking Thunder's head, and in that moment, Alex realized that sometimes betrayal comes in the most unexpected forms. Sometimes your place in the family isn't taken by another person, but by someone who never says a word, someone who will always be there, someone you can't compete with. A month passed. Alex lived in a rented apartment, drinking beer in the evenings and trying not to think about what had happened. But the harder he tried to forget, the more it haunted him. Elena didn't call, didn't text, she simply disappeared from his life. His place had been taken by that damn dog. At first, he was angry. Then he laughed at the absurdity of it all. But eventually, there was only silence, and it was the heaviest silence he had ever known. One night, he couldn't take it anymore. He got in his car and drove to their house. It was dark, but the lights were on inside. Alex turned off the engine and just sat there, watching. Elena was on the porch in her robe, a cup of tea in her hands. Thunder lay at her feet. A voice in his head whispered, "Go back." But he didn't listen. He got out of the car and walked slowly to the house. Elena noticed him immediately. "You're back," she said calmly. Alex grimaced. "I'm not back. I just wanted to see how you worked with him." He glanced at Thunder, who raised his head and stared at him. Elena ran her fingers through the dog's fur. "We're fine." Alex winced. "Elena, do you even realize how this looks? You're living with a dog, for God's sake. He sleeps in your bed. You're with him more than you ever were with me." She was silent for a moment, then said, "He's not just a dog, Alex." He laughed bitterly. "What are you even saying?" Elena nodded.
Yes.
"And for the first time in a long time, I know exactly what I'm saying." She looked at him, but there was no love in her eyes anymore. Only something cold and distant. "Goodbye, Alex," she said, turning and walking into the house. Thunder lingered for a moment, looking straight at Alex, as if he understood everything. Then he turned and followed Elena inside. Alex stood alone on the threshold of the house that was no longer his. He couldn't let it go. Something inside him gnawed at his thoughts. He tried to convince himself it was all in his head, that Elena was just overly attached to the dog, that his jealousy was irrational. But there were moments he couldn't forget, how she whispered sweet words to Thunder, how she touched him with a tenderness she had never shown Alex, how her eyes glowed with an almost unnatural light. One night, he decided to see for himself. He drove to the house quietly, without headlights, and waited until the lights went out. His heart pounded as he crept to the bedroom window. The curtains were drawn, but a faint yellow light from a nightlight seeped through a small gap. Alex peered inside and froze. Elena was sitting on the bed, wearing only a thin nightgown. Thunder lay beside her, his massive head resting on her lap. But it wasn't just that. The way she looked at him, the way her fingers slowly stroked his fur, the way she whispered something almost reverently, it made Alex's stomach churn. He felt a wave of nausea and rage. He wanted to burst in, grab her, scream, "What are you doing?" But his legs wouldn't move. He just stood there, watching as his wife disappeared into a world where he no longer existed. The next morning, Alex sold his car, packed his things, and left. He deleted Elena's number. The house, the woman he once loved, they no longer existed for him. But the past has a way of catching up. Late one evening, his phone rang. He didn't recognize the number, but he answered anyway. The voice on the other end was cold, commanding, yet with a strange note of anxiety. "Alex, it's Valentina, Elena's mother." "What do you want?" he asked sharply. "You need to come. Something's happened to Elena." "That's not my problem anymore." "Alex, please," her voice cracked. "She's been admitted to a psychiatric hospital." He was silent for a moment. "What happened?" Valentina hesitated. "The neighbors, they saw things. Things I can't explain. She wasn't herself. It's like she's gone." Alex felt a chill run down his spine. He thought he had left it all behind, but now the past was pulling him back in. "Where's she?" he finally asked. Valentina gave him the address. Alex hung up, stared at the wall for a long time, then grabbed his jacket and walked out into the night. The psychiatric hospital was cold and sterile, the air thick with the smell of bleach. An elderly nurse with a tired face glanced at him and, without a word, pointed down a long hallway.
"Third room on the right," she said.
Alex walked slowly, his heart pounding. When he reached the room, he paused at the door. Elena was sitting on the bed, wrapped in a gray hospital blanket. Her hair was disheveled, her eyes dull. But when she saw him, they lit up with something like hope. "Alex," she whispered. "Why did you call me?" he asked, staying in the doorway. Elena swallowed hard, her fingers clutching the edge of the blanket. "You have to believe me. It wasn't me. It was him." Alex frowned.
"Who?"
She looked up, and there was something in her gaze that sent a shiver down his spine. "Thunder, he wasn't just a dog, Alex. He chose me, and he's coming back." At that moment, a faint sound came from the window. Alex turned. Outside, in the darkness, a shadow moved, tall, looming, something more than a dog.
Elena smiled weakly.
"He's not done with me yet." Alex felt the room grow colder. He didn't know what to believe anymore. But one thing was certain, the shadow in the house had never truly left.